The camera flashes were blinding and there were too many reporters. It's time to announce the results. 87.5%, which is the incredible support that the President of Education received in the election. Han Mansu has been elected president, and his address to the public will begin any minute now. Honorable citizens, I am standing here in this place because I am concerned about the youth, who are the future of this country, said the newly elected president. He worked as a teacher for a long time and lived his life thinking about what is really the best way for children. The thing that the president regretted most was that in the past, there was no system of proper child rearing. In one school, not all high school students listened to the teacher. One of the young men thought it was more interesting to listen to music than to the teacher's boring talk. The student's behavior did not go unnoticed, and the teacher called the boy by name, Lee Yosef, trying to attract the attention of the defiant. The man tore the headphones off the young man's head with a sharp movement and repeated his remark. The teacher lost his temper, decided to punish the student, and ordered his mother to come to school. This demand of the teacher made Lee Yosef very angry. He could not control his emotions. Rage gripped the student, and he clutched a ballpoint pen in his hand. What happened the next moment shocked everyone in the classroom. The teacher who was supposed to guide them on the path of truth became the object of violence. Even very adult children often make mistakes, and the police have to intervene. Driving a car without a license is a favorite pastime of difficult teenagers. The four young men were having fun, refusing to stop at the request of the police. The driver was distracted from the road, and when he focused on it again, a disaster occurred. A woman was crossing the road, pushing a stroller in front of her, and a car was speeding by at a breakneck speed. Everything happened so quickly that the tragedy could not be avoided. Two people died because the reckless teenagers were driving. Such children feel no guilt, even though they were the cause of a terrible disaster for one family. And in any case, they will not be punished in full. Teenagers can be very cruel, and when united, they can abuse even adults who are weaker than them. At this time, there are no adults who can correct these children. Parents are worried about pleasing their children. People are afraid of retaliation, so no one dares to speak out. The president's speech was impressive, and he paused to slap his hand on the podium. The man said that today the era of forgiveness for being just children is over. The president promised the public that there would be no more lenient punishments for teenagers, and he proposed to repeal the law on the protection of minors. This law has been very problematic so far, but the previous government did not pay attention to it. If a child has committed a crime, he or she will undergo rehabilitation training. When the decision is made that their education is complete, these children will return to society as new people. The president considered this a new era for the law on the protection of minors. Now it will be called the Law on Rehabilitation and Re-Education. Journalists were stunned by the president's statements. The politician was convinced that if children disobeyed, they should be punished. For this purpose, the authorities will create a special institution for the re-education of juvenile offenders. The president was convinced that this was the only way to reform difficult teenagers and turn them into law-abiding people. The next day, a lot of high school students gathered at the stadium near the school building, all of them wanting to donate blood. Kim's nurse colleague asked if this was her first time at the school, and the woman replied that there are many children here who want to help others. She noticed that there were several times more donors than at the other school. Kim thought it was quite strange, because most young people don't even look at blood donation nowadays, and her friend agreed with her. There was a quarrel in the line. Someone was unhappy that they would have to wait a long time to do the same thing. It seems that the students are here for a reason, because if they show a certificate of blood donation, they will receive 5,000 won. The teenagers were irritated, and everyone wanted to get it done on time. One young man, who had a long line of people waiting to see him, offered to exchange a 5,000 won coupon plus a blood donation certificate for 10,000 won. The guy came up with a business where people bought a 5,001 coupon for 10,000 won. The hero did it for a reason. He pursued a specific goal. The young man wanted to get as many blood donation certificates as possible. The hidden cost of this document is approximately 12,000 won, and if you put up a certificate for 10,000 won, you will immediately receive dozens of messages from people who need transfusions. Before he came up with this business, he wondered why no one was doing it and realized that it was a crime. But this fact did not stop him. But the young man made this decision before the new law came into force. He believed that even if he was caught, he would only receive a warning. Violence, theft, fraud, prostitution, and even murder, whether it is normal for juvenile delinquency to go too far. Even violent crimes are not punished sufficiently. Counting today's profits, the hero was disappointed. 600,000 won, which is less than last month. In an incident without injuries, no one will report to the police. But even in such an ordinary case as fraud, one cannot be sure of impunity. The young man did not expect what happened the next moment. He got a sneaker right in the face. The blow was so strong that the hero lost his footing and flew to the ground. By committing a crime, you automatically become a target for a new crime. Anyone who has committed a crime and made a profit cannot be justified. No one will sympathize with the criminal, and he will not be able to complain to anyone. One of the local thugs sat down next to him and asked Min-soo how much he earned today. The young man realized that no one could protect him from these people. The next day, the teenagers discussed the law on rehabilitation and re-education. They believed that the ugly world had invented an ugly law. The top of the government, as always, is doing something stupid. One of the bandits released unpleasant odors outside with his fifth point. The man apologized, but added that many people's intestines relax with a cigarette. Sitting on Min-soo's head, the bastard was sure that his smell was more pleasant than the smell of cigarettes. The hero tried to hold his breath to avoid inhaling this stench. If he earned money, he has to share it. Even though Jong-soo went to prison, he can't be angry. Despite the situation in which Min-soo found himself and the numerical advantage, he did not give up. The bandit reminded him that Chang-soo was much scarier than him. He tried to scare Min-soo that their terrible leader would come today. Cho Chang-soo is the head of a criminal cartel consisting of juveniles who have committed a crime. Everyone suffered from it, but no one dared to come forward and recognize themselves as its victims. Everyone was afraid of revenge, which would not be long in coming, and the law would be powerless here. Jong-soo is literally omnipotent. There is nothing he cannot do. Min-soo asked if Cho-sang would be released from the colony today, and the bandit saw the horror in the hero's eyes. The bastard with the cigarette repeated that it was time to pay taxes, because it would be hard for both of them if Jong-sung hated them. The young man replied that he agreed and reached into his bag, and the bandits were happy that he had become obedient. The next moment, the smiles disappeared from the bandits' faces. The hero was not going to give up. He boldly asked why they were frozen. Min-soo gave the bandits the middle finger. He was not going to share his profits. The bastard was furious. He wasn't going to let it go. Rushing forward, he hit the hero with all his might. Tai-eun, the bandit's name, shouted, "If Jong-soo is in prison, is there nothing to be afraid of?" The bandits tried to calm their friend down, but he was ready to kill the young man. He was told that if he did not calm down, he would also be sent to a correctional facility. Un replied that he would not be intimidated by this. He would do his time and get out. The man exclaimed he would make Min-soo shake with terror every time they met. He swung his shovel but did not have time to strike. He was attacked from behind. The other bandits froze in their tracks, as they had not expected such a turn of events. All he could see was a large soul. One of Min's eyes swam, and with his other sighted eye he watched his rescuer's actions in amazement. He was a handsome, tall young man in a suit, and he took off his glasses, ready to fight back. He sat down next to the hero and asked how he was feeling. He was the president of the student council. Dae-eun was not going to accept defeat. He grabbed the shovel again, promising to finish off both boys. This promise of the bastard enraged the president of the student council. He was faster and stronger than Tae-eun, and he was going to teach him a good lesson. He slammed the bastard's face into the asphalt and asked him if he had ever killed. Un shouted at his comrades why they were standing there and not intervening. The comrades' words made the bandits attack the president of the student council with their fists. The young man managed to intercept the rapidly approaching fist of the scoundrel. With his other free hand, he hit the man in the face. One of the thugs shouted that he used to feel sorry for the president of the student council. But now everything has changed, so let him feel sorry for himself. But he, like his friend, was unlucky. The student was much more skilled in martial arts. The young man was confident in his own abilities, so the fat bandit quickly flew to the ground. Having dealt with the three scum, the president of the student council rushed to the last one. He was shaking with horror. He said he just stood there and did nothing. The closer the student approached, the wider the man's eyes opened in fright. During this time, the beaten Min-soo managed to catch his breath and get to his feet. The guy was in pain. His face was covered with abrasions, and one eye did not open at all. Throwing his backpack over his shoulder, Ming told his rescuer, "You said yourself, violence in school is forbidden." The boy's words made Kang Yu-sung stop, and he stopped beating the bandit. Ming-soo looked carefully at his savior. The man smiled and said that at such a moment it was better to thank him, calling him brother. Without turning around, the hero told someone that he was no longer his brother. Why stand next to a puddle and know that you will be splashed with mud? Kang Yu-sung said that he does not consider his younger brother to be dirt. No matter what Min-soo thinks, they are still brothers. The young man stopped the president of the student council, telling him to go and get rid of that watch. Khan looked at his watch, not understanding what his brother meant. Ming explained that if he was adopted by a wealthy family, he should change his watch, because even he was ashamed of it. The dial read, Penguin Orphanage. Kang Yu-sung exclaimed that he didn't care. He reminded his younger brother that it was time for school, but the hero wasn't going to go there. He said he was going home. The president of the student council called the younger man a fool and added that he should replace his watch. On his way home, Ming muttered under his breath why that idiot was interfering in his affairs, because he might not be able to enter the university. His brother, Kang Yu-sung, president of the student council and an applicant to the Korean Medical University, and he, the worst student in the school, Lee Min-soo. These are two half-brothers who were separated by fate. His brother's real name, Lee Hyun-soo, was adopted by a wealthy family and he became Kang Yu-sung. And he, Min-soo, is still a resident of the Penguin Orphanage. That's why his brother shouldn't get involved with him. Otherwise, he'll tarnish his perfect reputation. The hero can become an obstacle on Kang Yu-sung's path to a brilliant future. He must firmly follow his path, and Min must find his own way of life. In a dark alley in a container of old clothes, Min's way of living differently is hidden. The money he has been saving so diligently so far will ensure his future life. Here, in one place, he gathered all his property, 3,400,000 won. The hero's goal was 10 million, and he had to raise another 6,600,000. He had to wait 3 months for his next blood donation. Maybe he should go on a business trip to another school. And Ming didn't understand why he was so obsessed with money. In 2 years, he will have to leave the shelter, and of course he will receive 5 million won from the authorities. But it is difficult to buy a house with such money. The hero thought about getting a part-time job, but such minor orphans are not often hired. The young man realized that he was committing a crime, but he saw no other way out to earn money. Lee Min-soo no longer wanted to be a burden to his older brother. He was about to close his makeshift safe when an old friend from the gang appeared behind him. He exclaimed, "Does Min-soo really have so much money? Now he will tell him a funny story. If someone finds money obtained illegally, it will be confiscated." The bastard laughed merrily, thinking about how lucky he was today. The scoundrel reminded the boy that he had promised him that he would be frightened at his first appearance, and the time had come. Meanwhile, Kang Yu-sung returned to school. The classmates around him were talking to each other, but the young man was only interested in studying. He was brought out of his thoughts by the teacher's voice, who asked the teenagers to sit down and be quiet. The teacher said that Chon Sum, who had served his sentence there, had returned from the colony, and the principal concluded that he had repented and that his classmates would help him get used to school life. The children were having fun. They were not at all frightened by this prospect. Suddenly, the teenagers heard the squeaking of wheels in the corridor. All eyes turned to the front door of the classroom. Kang Yu-sung looked stunned, as did most of his fellow students. They remembered Cho Chong-soo as simply terrifying. His appearance alone could be very frightening. He was the head of a cartel of minors and generally all-powerful in this school. Now his appearance changed dramatically, and the bandit's eyes could not focus on any of the objects. Now he looked absolutely crazy, with no trace of the past terrible Cho Chang-soo left. Sitting in a wheelchair, he could not even control his own urination, and a puddle appeared on the classroom floor. His classmates started whispering about what had happened to him, how he could have changed so much in just 4 weeks. Special law on rehabilitation and re-education. The previous law on adults created only problems, so it was cancelled. Minors who have committed a crime undergo rehabilitation training in institutions under the control of the military. The adolescent will be kept in a special institution until a decision is made that the re-education is complete. Meanwhile, police cars were parked near the penguin shelter, and passers-by were forbidden to come close. Everyone around was wondering what had happened, and rumors were spreading in the crowd that someone had died. There was a traffic jam on the road, and the driver of one of the cars told his passenger that there seemed to be an accident ahead and they might be a little late for the course. The passenger of this car was Kang Yu-sung, who said that this was the shelter where he used to live. Suddenly, the young man realized that something could have happened to his brother. With a sudden movement, he opened the car door and got out, and the driver was unable to stop him. The first thing Khan saw under his feet made him think the worst. It was Lee Min-soo's watch, and the glass on it was broken. The boy felt crushed. He loved his younger brother very much and blamed himself for not saving him. At the crime scene, in a dark alley near the shelter, they found the body of a man, and people gossiped that it was a penguin pet. People were whispering that the prices of nearby buildings would fall because of the murder, and Kang Yu-sung tried to fight his way through the crowd. The hero was sure that his younger brother was lying there in the darkness under a white sheet. But suddenly the young man saw Lee Min-soo, not under the sheet but in handcuffs. Article 243, in conjunction with the special law on rehabilitation and re-education, the boy was detained at the scene of the crime. From now on, the young man's personal data will be under the control of the Re-Education Center. Any criminal case eventually goes to court. Room 303 housed the Re-Education Center of the Court of Simplified Jurisdiction for Minors. The man sitting in the office hit the table with his fist in frustration. It was a local judge who believed that some juvenile offenders could not be rehabilitated. He added that he sees no signs of Lee Min-soo's remorse. The young man must not forget that he is here because of a murder. The hero replied that he was not guilty and had not killed anyone. The guy said that he had already said all this, but no one listened to him. The judge was sure that Lee Min-soo was lying. The lawyer showed the brick in a plastic bag, claiming that it had the boy's fingerprints and bloodstains of the deceased. The judge was waiting for explanations. He recalled other violations of the law by Lee Min-soo. The man shouted that he had seen many such bad guys, that teenagers blame the situation on their family or something else, that they cannot be re-educated. There was gossip outside the office that the judge was very angry today. The lawyer kept shouting at the guy, saying that it was wrong to kill him, even for mockery, even for taking his money. You can't kill people because you don't like someone. If everyone did the same, this world would be full of corpses, which is why society taught Lee Min-soo. And if someone offends you, you need to ask for help from adults, because after all, the reason why the hero committed the crime is because he did not trust adults. Having said all this, the judge was finally ready to announce the sentence, in accordance with Article 28 of the Law on Rehabilitation and Education. The young man was ordered to be placed in a penal colony for re-education. When the hero and the other juvenile offenders were put on a bus and taken to the colony, they talked to each other. The guards tried to calm the boys down, but they paid no attention to them. The criminals asked when they would finally reach their destination, and were told that they had only a short drive to go. A few more minutes passed, and the bus with the prisoners finally reached the public center for the re-education of juvenile delinquents. The guys were stunned by the appearance of the facility where they were brought. It looked like a real prison. As soon as they arrived on the territory, the new inmates noticed the prisoners who were already there working with shovels. The boys were amazed to see so many girls here. This fact greatly encouraged the young men, who were looking forward to romantic encounters. Hearing the screams of the newcomers, the girls looked frightened. The guard disappointed the teenagers because now they saw a women's colony and their building was opposite. Lee Min-soo was not going to participate in this madness. He sat and thought about the judge's words. How does it feel to believe adults? The hero recalled his childhood. He repeatedly told the truth, but they still did not believe him. Finally, the bus with the prisoners entered the territory of the colony. The door has closed, and now juvenile offenders will not see freedom soon. The guys went outside, and the guards ordered them to get in line. Some of the most impudent began to ask the wardens for cigarettes, but were quickly told that minors were not allowed to smoke. The hero still paid no attention to the fuss around him. It was becoming increasingly difficult to ignore others, and the old-timers of the colony were becoming more aggressive in their attempts to attract Lee Min-soo's attention. The locals looked terrible. They resembled Cho Chang-soo rather than normal teenagers. Their appearance and behavior were reminiscent of madmen. The newcomers looked frightened when they saw those with whom they would have to live next to them for some time. The next moment, everyone except Lee Min-soo was laughing at these unfortunates. One of the guards who brought the new prisoners here noticed a noise. A new guard came outside. He was not as friendly as the ones who had accompanied the prisoners on the trip. The man's shouts made the boys stop talking and pay attention to him. The group of them, who had been here for a long time, immediately lined up, their faces and bodies covered with abundant fruit, and a red letter was visible on each of their chests. The guard called them to salute the head of the colony. The prisoners obeyed the orders of this warden immediately. Those who had just arrived in the colony were amazed at the behavior of the old-timers. They could not imagine how they could break the insolent here. At that moment, the one whom everyone was waiting for, the head of the institution, finally appeared outside the colony. The newcomers whispered among themselves whether they should do it too. The local owner looked smug and confident in his power. The head of the colony said only one word. "Stick it in!" The new guys here laughed at this team. They did not understand what this man was saying. But the next moment they realized what was going on, the old-timers of the colony stuck their heads in the ground. The guys were stunned by this picture. How could it be possible? Do they not know about the rights of minors? The head of the colony said, looking at the new arrivals, that today only insects arrived. The local natives, still standing in strange positions, grunted loudly. The manager commanded his subordinates, "I give you 10 minutes to turn this garbage into livestock." One of the most arrogant newcomers shouted who he was calling garbage. But before he could even finish speaking, he received a powerful punch right in the face. The other guys were stunned by this turn of events. They were not given time to shrink back, as the blows fell like a hailstorm on everyone. All the prisoners who managed to spend some time in this colony eventually became like zombies. They did not contradict the words of the colony head. Lee Min-soo and everyone else who had just arrived looked scared when they saw these robots. One by one, they were hit and fell to the ground. A moment later, all the newcomers were lying motionless, having been hit hard. The director, who called the juvenile offenders pigs, said that he really liked their behavior. Now they were not pigs but slaves, and from that moment on he allowed them to talk like people. The old-timers of the colony were very happy about this fact because they were tired of grunting. Lee Min-soo was lying on the ground, wondering what the hell was going on. The hero thought that it was better to die in this fight than to live in this colony. The young man decided to pretend that he had fainted and sniff around. The other guys were trying to escape, begging their pursuers to stop, and Lin W was sure that if they ran and screamed, they would become easy prey. The young men tried to find protection from the guards, but they said they were not allowed to come here. The hero was surprised by the guard's smile. If he really wanted to help, he could have done something. The frightened juvenile criminals did not stop, but the first ones immediately received batons to the head. The man thought the teenagers were carrying garbage and yelled at them to stay away. 3 guards ruthlessly beat one guy. Lee Min-soo decided that this was the starting point of his future, and he lay face down on the ground, noticing every detail of the fight. The hero concluded that this was not real violence with the intent to kill, because the guards were not going to become murderers, and neither was he. Suddenly, the young man heard the voice of the colony director right above his head, and he called him cunning. The man said that the young man had come recently and should have been confused, but he thought of using this trick. Li Ming tried to apologize, but the man put his foot on his head, saying that there was nothing to apologize for. He liked such clever little rats. The head of the colony said that he would now call him a rat to make him laugh. He demanded that the boy make sounds resembling a rat's squeak. The subordinates reported to the commander that the new participants were completely undressed. The beaten and naked young men looked very scared. Lin Min-soo's clothes were also taken off, and the hero was lying on the ground in his underwear. The head of the colony ordered his subordinates to start branding new prisoners. Meanwhile, Lee's older brother Min Sung had other things on his mind. Kong Yu Sung came to the house and pressed the intercom for us. He didn't get an answer, so he decided that no one was home. The guy looked at his watch. It was 2 p.m., a great time to be empty. Once inside the entrance, Khan pulled out a pair of scissors from his jacket pocket. Holding the door handle with one hand, he tried to use scissors to open the lock. He did it quickly enough and was opening the door in a moment. When Kong was still a young Lee Hyun-soo, he and his younger brother often broke into houses. Min-soo watched in the hallway while his older brother robbed, taking whatever could bring money. That was until the brothers were caught by the police and they ended up in an orphanage. After those days, Kang Yu-sung didn't think he'd have to do it again. But this time, he's not here to rob, he's here to learn something. His younger brother is in a juvenile detention center, and he has to save him. Upon entering the bedroom, the young man was stunned by what he saw. The man was tied to the bed by his hands. Kong ended up in the house of the former leader of a teenage crime cartel, Cho Chang-soo. He looked as crazy as the day he returned to school from the colony. The hero was amazed that such an educational colony could turn a gangster into such a vegetable. The young man had heard that Cho Chang had fallen from a height and injured his head, but his body showed no injuries, and Kong wanted to know what really happened. There were times when even the police avoided meeting with the leader of juvenile delinquents. But now he is in such a miserable condition. It cannot be the result of a simple head injury. Someone has worked on him hard. The madman continued to mumble, and Kang tried to bring Cho to his senses, as he needed information. He was in the colony for only 4 weeks, and it is unknown when Lee Min-soo will be released. The student ordered the bandit to get ready and answer the questions. But Cho Chang-soo continued to talk nonsense. The hero was upset because he realized that he had wasted his precious time. Suddenly, something on the unfortunate man's body caught the guy's attention. He saw a red mark on Cho's chest and wondered what it was. It was a stigma that every inmate of a juvenile correctional facility received. Some young men had a large red letter B on their chests. All the new arrivals had already received their letters. They were sitting on their knees right on the street, waiting for the colony director's orders. Letters denoted the classification of crimes committed by the perpetrators. For example, theft or material damage is a letter C. Looking through his notes, the head of the colony concluded that this time only boring trash had arrived. Suddenly, the man shouted that he had found an interesting option after all, that his eyes had not failed him. He was referring to Lee Min-soo. He jumped up from his chair and exclaimed that he was greeting a rat. The head of the colony laughed. This young man is actually more cruel than he seems at first glance. The letter A means that the teenager committed a murder, and this time he is the only one of all the new arrivals. The director promised that the rat would have a particularly fun re-education life. Lee Min-soo, 18 years old, crime, murder. Grade, A, A new school day has begun at Yanji Girls High School. Two friends went outside for a little rest during the break. Suddenly, something caught the attention of one of the girls. The beauties froze in place, staring impolitely at the young man reading the book. It was Kang Yu-sung in person, and the girls thought he was handsome. One of them decided to say hello, but the young man could not hear what she was saying because he had headphones in his ears. The beauties wanted to get to know him better. One of the girls asked if he was also a student and suggested that they follow each other on social media. The hero pulled out his earpiece and apologized, saying that unfortunately he doesn't use Instagram. Kang decided to take this moment to ask them something, and the girls didn't mind helping him. He managed to say that there was one person he was looking for. His name was Min. As soon as the young man said the name, the girls pointed somewhere in the direction. Looking there, Kang Yu-sung was stunned by the beauty of the woman. He was interested in this particular girl because she had recently been released from a penal colony and could share important information. The girls looked scared. They thought Min was crazy, and they didn't want her to notice them. The hero went straight to the juvenile delinquent, and his actions stunned the beauties. The boy and the girl stopped. They looked into each other's eyes in silence. Min made a bubble out of chewing gum and asked him what he wanted. Khan honestly said that he wanted to know everything about the penal colony. The girl didn't want to talk about it, so she said, "Fuck off!" and walked away. Min was not going to stop, but Kang Yu-sung was used to achieving his goals. The hero decided that he should tell the truth about why he needed this information. The young man honestly admitted that his younger brother was in the penal colony. This truthful confession made the girl stop. But only for a moment, Min said nothing and moved on. The hero was upset when he realized that he had asked too openly. Next time, you need to use a different method. Suddenly, Kang Yu-sung heard the girl calling him. The next moment, a motorcycle helmet flew into his hands. The guy's reaction was fine. He managed to catch it. Min invited him to sit behind her on a motorcycle. The girl thought that this was not the right place for such a conversation. As soon as the hero got on the motorcycle, it took off. Over the sound of the wind, Kang asked Min why she decided to talk to him, and the beauty replied that her younger brother was still there. The young man asked the Rehabilitation and Re-Education Center what kind of place it was. He couldn't see the girl's face now, but it suddenly became very sad, and Min replied, "It's a real hell there." Meanwhile, the colony was going through a hard training session that lasted for 3 hours in a row, and the director was not going to stop. He said it was time to move on to the next training session. Lee Min-soo could barely stand on his feet. He was not used to such exertion. The head of the colony ordered him to start jumping with lunges, at which point he heard grunts from all sides, and the hero had to squeal like a rat. The guards were having fun watching the torment of the teenagers. Ming thought it was not just a mockery, but a real torment. There was only one thought in the young man's head. When will it end? The guys around them kept lunging and grunting like pigs. The head of the colony was happy listening to the sounds of the animals. One of the guys couldn't stand the load and fell down. The guards tried to make him get up. One of them shouted, "There's a straggler! The training starts over!" The young man was dragging his feet, begging the guards to stop, because he had a stomachache and needed to go to the toilet. People made fun of him, saying that he couldn't even stand it. But when he first arrived, he pretended to be very strong. Suddenly, the guards stopped, and they heard the voice of the director standing right next to them. The man said, "Are you beating him so hard just because the boy wants to go to the bathroom? Aren't you ashamed of yourselves?" The young man looked up. Now he considered the head of the colony his savior. He must have been holding back, and only now, when the pain became unbearable, did he dare to speak. The man stretched out his hand to the boy, as if to help him get up from the ground. The director asked the other newcomers who else wanted to go to the bathroom. Many of the gullible young men shouted that they also wanted to go to the bathroom. But Lee Min-soo was smarter. The hero thought in the beginning the principal treated them like garbage, but now it has changed. The guards ordered everyone who wanted to use the restroom to stand in a single line. If they don't go to the win now, they won't be able to use the restroom until the end of the training. Lee wondered if they would really be sent to the restroom, and the rest of them would continue training. If that was the case, it would be unfair, and everyone would pretend to have stomach aches. The hero heard people in the line talking about how they could stall, and the training would end without them. Lee Min-soo considered everything that was happening now to be very suspicious. The director asked if there were any animals who wanted to leave the queue. A rare chance, the young man thought. Are they going to send me to the toilet that easily? Sincere kindness is like the fruit of an unknown tree in the mountains. Ming believed that the more tempting and sweet it looked, the more dangerous it could be if eaten without thinking. The hero made the decision that seemed to him the only right one at the time. The young man raised his hand and squeaked like a rat, drawing the director's attention to himself. He knew that he had to be careful in such a place. The guard shouted, addressing Lee Min-soo. The boy continued to squeak and was ordered to speak in a human way. The young man said that his stomach no longer hurt. He wanted to return to training. His words angered the guard, who wondered if the juvenile offender thought he was in a kindergarten, and the man's hands were around the boy's neck. The hero could barely speak, but he apologized to the guard. The man threw Mina out of the lineup, saying he would follow him. The other young men in the line thought Lee was strange if he decided to return to grueling training. The hero thought, here they are treated like animals, but they are allowed to use the restroom. It is really very strange. One of the guards shouted for all those who wanted to go to the toilet to gather. The director of the colony was smiling. He said that it was right that people and animals should meet their needs. He added that he let them rest for 30 minutes. They were very jealous of the others for continuing to train. The young men in the line considered those who continued to train to be fools. The next moment, the principal ordered those who were not going to the restroom to stop training. Half of the prisoners who were going to the toilet were surprised by the order of the head of the colony, and those who continued to train were frozen in place, as they had not expected such a turn of events. In complete silence, the man begins that they will now make a human centipede. Lee Min-soo was stunned by this news. He lacked the imagination to understand what was about to happen. The millipede is an animal belonging to the class of millipedes. It unites 4 classes of terrestrial arthropods. 15 pairs of legs is the standard, the largest number, up to 177 pairs. This creature is lower than humans and animals. The guard ordered the prisoners to put their faces in the ass of the person in front of them, put their feet on the shoulders of the person behind them, lift themselves up on their hands, and endure. And if someone falls, the time will continue. The boys were called lower beings who could not even control their own feces. For people like them, going to the restroom is a luxury they don't deserve. The cruel director of the colony ordered the millipedes to do their dirty work because he had prepared everything and made a toilet for them. The man kept kicking the boys in the stomach, one after another. It was an incredible test. The boys could barely hold on. The boys continued to be beaten, demanding that they go to the toilet in this way. One of the guards pointed a hose with ice water at the prisoners. All the others joined him, watering the exhausted juvenile criminals abundantly. The guys who used to behave like beasts, who were not afraid of anything in this world only 3 hours ago, have now become completely different. Now they were obedient animals, waiting for their master's orders. They understand only force, and they are frightened of being beaten again. Suddenly, the gramophones, which were fixed on a tall pole in the middle of the yard, sounded the signal to end the training. The director was disappointed that it was over so quickly, but he ordered the prisoners to go inside. The man told the guards that it was time to feed the animals. The cruel head of the academy went to his office. The prisoners saw a building in front of them with the inscription, Dining Room. After receiving the tray of food, Lee Min-soo was stunned by his lunch. A sad sight. The hero thought that this was food, but after such grueling training, it would not be enough to restore his strength. The guy was surprised by another unfair moment in this room. Lee didn't understand why they were the only ones who ate sitting on the floor. Were they really considered animals here? Could they at least have been given a spoon? Suddenly, the guard shouted, ordering the prisoners to sing a song of gratitude. Of course, the newcomers did not know the words to this song. He repeated his order to the audience, demanding that they sing. Those prisoners who had been here for a long time started singing. We are not people. We are dogs and pigs. We eat what we are given, do what we are told, rejoice when they scold us, rejoice when they beat us. The hero was stunned by the words of this song. This colony is really a real hell. The young man looked at the frame on the wall, where the words of this terrible song were written. Li Ming still couldn't believe that they were all considered animals here. But the guy had no choice. He was no match for a soldier in the field. His hand went down into the bowl of rice. He took the food into his palm and put it to his mouth, deciding that he could take it all and not go crazy. A little cunning and patience, and he will definitely get out of here. Meanwhile, Kasemin brought Kang Yu-sung to a quiet place to talk. It turned out that the girl had chosen this place for a reason. The view from the bridge was spectacular. The former prisoner explained that they were looking at a rehabilitation and re-education center, and they could see it from here. Kang was surprised that the colony was visible from here. He had a lot of questions for Kasemin. The beauty explained that she comes every day to remember her younger brother. The hero replied that his brother was still on trial and would probably be sent there soon. Khan asked if the girl really thought that place was hell. She replied that maybe hell was even better. The colony was not meant for human life. Kasemin admitted that every day she has nightmares about working in that place, and she can't sleep without sleeping pills. The beautiful woman was surprised to hear that he was so concerned about his brother that he had even come to her. The hero replied that it was his mother's last request to protect his younger brother, but he could not fulfill it. That's why he's here before it's too late, and we need to do something. The young man said that among those released from the colony, Min is the only one who is fine. The girl realized that he wanted to hear a story about how to survive in a correctional facility. Khan wanted to hear a way to get out of this hell unscathed. Instead of answering, the beauty stuck out her tongue and made crazy eyes. She was pretending so she was able to save herself. Khan didn't believe it. He thought the girl was joking. She'd better be honest. The beauty realized that she had upset the guy. But Kaseman was not joking at all. Only cunning will help you survive in hell. It turned out that the girl's hair was not real. She showed scars on her head. Lee Min-soo's older brother was stunned by this revelation. He could not believe that real horrors were happening in the colony. The beauty said that they had gathered psychopaths from all over the country. She lost her temper for a moment, and a fight broke out. There are so many idiots around, it's hard to imagine who knew that oil would be poured on her head. The hero apologized that the girl had to remember such things. He couldn't even imagine that she had been through such a thing, so he said she shouldn't say anything else. But the beauty did not stop. She said that because she managed to imitate a madwoman, she was released earlier. Kaseman saw that her new acquaintance was upset, and she threatened that if he felt sorry for her, he would get it. The hero asked the girl to remove her leg. He was very serious. The beauty was ready to continue her story about the order in the colony. After the admission ceremony, the boys and girls take a shower and eat. Everyone wears a uniform so as not to stand out from the crowd of prisoners. There is no individuality in the colony. In case of an escape attempt, everyone wears a collar with a built-in GPS beacon. After changing clothes, Li Ming touched his neck. He didn't know what it was yet. The guard ordered the recruits not to turn anywhere and to follow him, and they grunted in agreement. After the items are distributed, the prisoners are taken to their cells. Juvenile offenders are classified according to the crime committed. Cameras are categorized by crime, for example. The letter E means assault, D means drugs, and C means theft and fraud. Kaseman was in cell B, a special robbery. Judging by the article under which Khan's younger brother was convicted, he ended up in cell A. Only those criminals who have committed murder serve their sentences here. When the cell door closed behind Lee Min-soo, the young man was left face to face with the real killers. The hero realized at first sight that he would not find friends here. For some time, silence reigned in the cell, and the prisoners looked at each other carefully. Those who had been in the colony for a long time were looking at the newcomer. One young man was sitting in the center of the cell. I think he was in charge. Lee thought, is the silence a game of nerves he can't lose? Suddenly, one of the prisoners shouted, "You rude asshole! Don't you know you have to introduce yourself? What is your name? Where are you from? And what did you do?" The hero realized that after playing on his nerves, they were collecting information about the newcomer's weaknesses. Li Ming said his name, explained that he was from the Penguin Orphanage, and studied at the Sonrak School. One of the prisoners laughed, wondering if the orphanage graduate was among the colony's elite. It turned out that some of the inhabitants of this cell had heard of the Sonrak School and remembered Cho Chang-soo. The head of this cell asked the guy why he was in a re-education facility. After all, if he got into room A, he did something really bad. Only now did Lee Min-soo realize who was in charge. The hero honestly said that he was imprisoned for murder. This confession shocked his cellmates. The guys looked at each other, wondering if the real killer had finally gotten here, or if this squishy guy was lying. The young man noticed the surprise on the faces of his cellmates. He thought he was among similar types, but it seems murder is the worst crime. Is it really possible that even the gravity of a crime can help you gain power here? Suddenly, one of the criminals turned disdainfully to the one whom Lee had initially taken to be in charge. Now it became clear that the young man was the weakest here, but Li Ming was wrong. He turned his gaze to the chair where the dark-haired man was sitting. It turned out that it was not a piece of furniture, but a young man standing on a bridge. He could barely hold on, his features sharpened, and with the last of his strength he barked like a dog. He was forbidden to speak in a human way and was constantly beaten. It was a miserable existence. One of the cellmates was shouting. Did the chair think that he would remove the label of the smallest? But nothing happened. Maybe he wanted to fight with the killer. Li Ming came to the conclusion that whether you are weak on the outside or on the inside, you will be bullied. He recalled his own problems caused by local bandits. The young man decided that he would rather be a murderer than allow himself to be bullied for his weakness. There were a lot of rules in the colony, and 19 o'clock was the time for repentance. Children in a correctional facility have to write 10 pages of confession every day. Lee Min-soo had no idea what to write because he hadn't killed anyone. He tried to ignore what was happening around him in his cell. His neighbors tried to play baseball with sheets of paper. One of them shouted that he used to play on the team. Another said that he had been sent to the colony for beating a younger comrade. Lee asked why they didn't write letters of remorse. One of the criminals was surprised to ask why they had to write it at all. Poppy will write everything for them anyway, as they called the smallest guy in their cell. Lee was also advised to hand over her letters of remorse. Poppy would end it all. The hero asked what Poppy was and why he got up and stopped writing. The unfortunate young man said that he had to go to the bathroom. He was allowed to go to the wind, but was again forbidden to speak in a human way. Lee Min-soo was once again convinced that I do not pay any attention to human rights here. Everyone around us is a spectator who trains the animals. The blonde young man in the cell was considered a puppy and called Poppy, like a dog. Therefore, in places where there are no spectators, a real struggle for survival among animals unfolds. No one will protect you if you are weak, you will be attacked. His cellmates demanded that he behave like a dog. To survive, you need to become stronger or pretend to be strong. The bandits followed the young man to the restroom and demanded that Poppy do his business like a puppy. The boy realized that it was useless to argue, so he did as they wanted. If you are weak, you will become a pet of the strong. At 20 o'clock, it was time to take a shower. There were no separate stalls in the colony. All the boys showered together. Only 3 minutes are allotted for a person's skin, and they need to wash using only soap and water. Lee Ming-soo looked at the small washcloth in his hand. It was covered with hair. The hero thought that at least 50 people were washing with this soap, and that they could catch an infection. At 21 o'clock, the roll call before curfew begins. All the prisoners were sitting on their knees and taking turns calling out numbers. Li Ming called out number 5, followed by Poppy. The puppy was forbidden to speak human language, so instead of a number, he said, "Woof." The hero was amazed by the unfortunate man's action, and he was terrified to see how the guards would react. The man swung silently, and in a moment Poppy would be in trouble. The blow hit him right on the head. It could have broken his skull. The unfortunate man received blow after blow. The guard knew his business. The boy could not hold back his tears. He was in great pain. After the prisoners are checked before going to bed, it is time for curfew. At 22 o'clock, the lights are turned off. It's the end of the day. Everyone should be asleep. Li Ming could not sleep. He looked up at the ceiling and heard a soft cry. The hero was silent. He did not know how to encourage this kid. One of my cellmates asked who was whining like a human being. Poppy covered his mouth, trying not to draw attention to himself. Lee Min-soo was finally able to fall asleep, and that's how his first night in the penal colony went. The prisoner's morning started at 5:30 a.m. with cleaning and morning roll call. After making the bed, the boys washed the floor, and Lee did it together with the poor blonde. Morning in the colony begins before dawn. At 6 o'clock, breakfast is served in each cell. After the morning roll call, the food distribution begins, and plates are passed through a hole under the door. His cellmates gathered around a small table. Li Ming asked the others why they didn't eat breakfast in the dining room. He was told that he was left to train outdoors during the day, so lunch is outside. The hero asked where Poppy had gone and why he wasn't having breakfast. The guy was waiting for an answer, but his cellmates looked down and remained silent. Finally, one of them said that the young man was downstairs, holding the table. Poppy was yelled at because he was standing unevenly and spilled someone's soup. It was impossible to endure such mockery and not go crazy. Li Ming told the others that the young man needed to be fed. The two prisoners laughed and asked why he was worried. They were friends, so they cared about Poppy very much. They said they personally cooked the dog's food and collected all the leftovers. This is how the dog's food is prepared, and it's time for Poppy to have breakfast. The hero was stunned by what he heard. It was just the height of mockery. The stray dog said that this way they have no waste. The dog was salivating from such deliciousness. The young man looked at the disgusting remains in fear. No matter how hungry and tired he was, it took a lot of effort to force himself to eat it. Poppy closed his eyes and lowered his head to his plate. Lee Min-soo couldn't take this abuse anymore. He kicked the table lid off and told the kid not to eat it. His cellmates did not expect such an act from the newcomer. The hero seriously asked the frightened blonde if he was really a dog. The boy looked at Lee with big eyes, not daring to say a word. Suddenly, from the dark corner of the cell, I heard the voice of the boss. Didn't the killer know that this place has its own hierarchy and rules? And if you come late, you have to obey. And if there is no newcomer left, let him become the leader by winning the fight. He then added that Lee must first defeat Poppy. If he loses, he will become the new puppy of their camera. The hero said, "Damn game of hierarchy." Lee Min-soo called all those present damn children. He added, "Enough is enough. Those who got into the colony because of their joints cannot get rid of their hooliganism." But then the unthinkable happened. Poppy, whom Lee was trying to protect, attacked him first and without warning. Everyone present began to cheer for the kid. They shouted that he was a real madman. Suddenly, someone shouted that the killer had better defend himself. Otherwise, he would really become the new Poppy. The young man realized that if he lost here, he would be mixed with the dirt. The blonde continued to beat him, but tears appeared on the teenager's face. He was hitting and apologizing at the same time. Meanwhile, Kang Yu-sung decided to visit the orphanage where he spent his childhood. When the young man was inside, memories came flooding back. The director of the school was delighted to see such a guest. She asked the boy if he was going to enroll tomorrow and if he had remembered to bring everything he needed. Kang held a toy penguin in his hand. He explained that it was his younger brother's treasure. The woman recalled that these two were the most problematic children in their shelter. Especially Yu-song, who used to beat the neighborhood children as if he were catching rats. The young man smiled, as if he really was. The director asked him if he didn't remember that the children were so afraid of him that they didn't even come near the shelter. Kang Yu-sung replied that the director was very wrong about this. Lee was still lying on the floor, covering his head with his hands from the blonde's blows. Poppy kept hitting his defender and shouting words of apology. The young man stood up for himself. He no longer wanted to be a local puppy. The other cellmates laughed when they found out yesterday that Min-soo was a murderer. They were scared, but he's a real loser. The bald man started mocking Lee. He said that's why his parents abandoned him. Now he's the new Poppy. At that moment, the hero got tired of being beaten, and the bald man received a strong punch in the jaw. The blonde froze in place. He did not expect this from his defender. Everyone in the cell froze with their mouths open. The current leader of this gang looked dazed. Lee's madness came out. He was not going to take it anymore. The hero said, "From now on, I will turn everyone into puppies." His older brother believed that if Ming went crazy, no one could stop him. Another roommate received the next blow. The young man shouted that now they would be Poppy themselves. The hero was going to take full revenge on everyone present. At that moment, Li Ming received a powerful blow to the back. One of the men said, "Are you going to make us Poppy? Have you lost your mind? What can you do alone?" They added, "This is room A, you shouldn't behave so boldly." There are many people here who were complete scumbags on the outside, and they took pity on him because Lee is an orphan who was abandoned by his mother. Before he could finish speaking, a toilet bowl covered his mouth. Ming forced him to shut up in this way. The hero seems to have lost his mind. He will not tolerate these bastards mentioning his mother. Two others rushed to help their friend, intending to kill him. But the hero's question, "Are you really going to kill?" made them stop. Lee Min-soo held a sharp piece of wood in his hand in front of him. Now the young man really looked like a madman. He asked if his cellmates had ever killed anyone. The new president said in his speech, "This is a new era of the law on the protection of minors, and if you disobey, you must be punished." But not everyone in power agreed with the new president's words. Some did not understand why the punishment was necessary. Let this fool punish himself. The former president was irritated. Some idiot appeared out of nowhere and took his place. The president was talking to his bodyguards, and he regretted that the enemy had not been destroyed before he took office. Suddenly, the man looked around and saw something that surprised him. Kang Yu-sung knelt in front of him, kneeling on the ground. The hero said that it is still early, of course, but he wants to be drafted into the army. If the issue with the army is resolved quickly, he thinks it will benefit him in politics. It turns out that the former president of the country was the foster father of Lee Min-soo's older brother. The man said that he was really taking care of his father, even though he had canceled his admission to the medical school. He wanted to hear directly what Kang Yu-sung wanted. The man understood that the boy was doing this because of his younger brother, and this fact irritated him greatly. Without waiting for an answer, he hit the ball. Even if the young man is drafted into the army right now, there is no guarantee that he will become a guard in this colony. The hero replied that he knew all this very well, so he asked his father for help. The former president asked, "Your younger brother screwed up, and you want me to clean it up?" Kang Yu-sung couldn't figure out whether his foster father would agree to help. After a pause, the man said, "A favor for a favor?" He asked if the young man could make his father president. The man added that he was ready to follow his son, but that he should make him president. To return to this post, Lee Min-sung was going to pierce anyone who came near him. Suddenly, the young man felt himself being grabbed by the arms. He grabbed the hero with a brush in his mouth so that his comrades could attack. At the same moment, the guy was punched in the face by a bald man. Lee's head hung down, and he seemed to have lost consciousness. But it was just a way to take the enemy by surprise. The hero kicked the bald man right between the legs, and the blow was so strong that the bastard's eggs burst. And the one who was holding the young man's hands was hit in the face with a piece of bruschetta. The prisoner, who was considered to be in charge in this cell, calmly asked, "Is your button of madness Mom, or the fact that you were abandoned?" He continued, "Tears come to my eyes. Does your mother know that the child she abandoned became a murderer?" Li Ming could not stand such words. He rushed straight at the person who insulted his mother's memory. The hero demanded an apology and promised to lose his eye. Badit pretended not to understand why he needed to apologize, whether it was for Li's mother's abandonment or for his murder. The prisoner wanted to end it right away. The next moment, he let go of the piece of bruschetta and said it wasn't him. This statement by the cell leader stunned Min-soo. He continued to say something incomprehensible. That guy is the main culprit in the mess. The hero looked around. He did not understand who his cellmate was talking to. At that moment, the door opened, and 3 guards ran into the cell, waving batons, and someone was about to get in trouble. Lee Min-soo did not expect this turn of events, and he immediately received a strong punch in the face. The guards ordered everyone to stand against the wall as they continued to beat poor Lee. The guards called him crazy and promised to blow his brains out. The cunning leader said that Lee himself had attacked them, and they were only injured. He would describe everything in detail in a statement. The guards asked if everyone was just sitting there, and the newcomer started a riot by himself. The teenagers confirmed these words. Even the dog that started it all also confirmed the main man's words. The guards decided that the rebel could not be left here, so they grabbed him by the hair and dragged him out of the cell. The hero was placed in solitary confinement with his hands and feet tied. He has to understand all his mistakes. Lee Min-soo was sentenced to 15 days of solitary confinement. Another name for solitary confinement is the punishment room. If you change the mess in your cell, the culprit will be isolated for a while, and the days spent here will not be counted as days in prison. The hero decided that in order to be useful enough for himself, he had to make a mess from the very beginning to get here. The guards watched him through a barred window. Lee was ordered to sit upright, and another day of solitary confinement was added for lying down. The young man thought there was no comfort in this colony. In the punishment room, you have to stay on your knees until the time of curfew. He was monitored 24 hours a day, every day. Hands and feet should be tied during the entire period of detention. The only good thing was that he was untied when he wanted to go to the toilet. But when the hero did his dirty deeds, it turned out that there was no toilet paper. The guard shouted at him to stop thinking about all sorts of nonsense and let the prisoner finish as soon as possible, and the young man replied that it was impossible because there was no toilet paper. The guard told him to look around, and after heeding the advice, the young man saw a tap with water dripping from it. The guard advised him to wash his face, and he was not very happy with this advice. He looked at his own hand with horror. The hero was quite squeamish, so this situation forced him to restrain his nauseous impulse. For lunch, the young man had a fish, a spoonful of rice, a disgusting soup, and some leaves. Lee Min-soo thought, can't he untie his hands to eat? He had to eat like a dog. While consuming it, the young man thought that when he returned, he would kill all his cellmates. He also has to write letters of remorse in solitary confinement, and now he has to write twice as much, including the mistakes that brought him here. At what point did he stop writing and start painting? The hero depicted each of his cellmates on paper and wrote down their characteristic features to analyze them. It's clear that they are all problematic guys, but the biggest problem is only one. A local leader named Ka Se-jung needs to be eliminated. The young man could hardly wait to lie down after the battle. As soon as he touched his head on the floor, he fell asleep. The boy dreamed about himself and his brother as children. The children woke up to their house on fire. The kids stood by and watched the terrible fire. The hero woke up in a sweat. This dream scared him a lot. Having mastered his emotions, the young man thought that perhaps he had a bad dream because he slept in an uncomfortable position. Lee thought that if he fell asleep again, he would see the same thing. Lee Min-soo's bound legs were very numb. He decided to sit down so he wouldn't fall asleep again that night. Thus, 16 days of his solitary confinement passed. Finally, the moment came when the hero was released from solitary confinement and returned to room A. His cellmates were not very happy to see him. The young man saw their inquisitive looks, and he asked them irritably what they wanted. The boys smiled and apologized, saying that they had overreacted and Poppy would not be Poppy anymore. They offered to live together. Lee was surprised to think that everything had been resolved so easily. The hero said he was ready to accept their apology. And most importantly, the apology of that son of a bitch Sejun. It was at this moment that the local leader's foot came down on the young man's head. Ka Se-jung asked arrogantly if he was looking for a mama's boy. They all conspired to grab Li Ming's arms and legs and put a gag in his mouth. Now the hero is really scared. Now he's in real trouble. He was dragged to the toilet, and in his mouth were the underpants his cellmate had been wearing for a week. The leader of this cell said he was glad that the mama's boy was looking for him first, but the one who was waiting for him was more impatient. It seems that the place where Lee hit him was very painful. The bald man with his pants down went to the restroom. The hero could not resist. He was held by his arms and legs. The young man's eyes nearly popped out of their sockets in horror. Suddenly, someone entered the cell and the abusive Lee stopped. Ka Se-jung greeted the new warden and asked him to ignore him, as they had received permission for what they had just done. The man asked from whom they had received permission and threatened that they would be punished. The warden extended his hand to the person who had just been bullied. Lee Min-soo stared at the outstretched hand in shock. Then the hero looked up at the face of the new warden. Recognizing him, he didn't say a word, just extended his hand to meet him. The palms of these two hands finally met. Lee's older brother, Kong Yu-sung, became the new warden of the re-education colony. This means one thing. He succeeded in implementing his plan. The elder brother was very happy to see the younger brother in his right mind. He made it in time. The hero helped Lee to get up, and now he is not alone. Before being sent to the colony, Khan had heard many stories about the war. His father dragged him to karaoke to introduce him to someone. The man tried very hard to sing a song about the war with all his heart. It was dedicated to a real soldier, a patriot of his country. The soldier said that the general's song, as expected, encapsulated the aspirations of the spirit of the defenders of the fatherland. His interlocutor replied, "What general? How much time had passed since then? Although he is now a former president and politician, he is a general at heart, a patriot." But there is one fact that worries the military man: why an old acquaintance wants to make his son a soldier. Other politicians do not want to send their children to the army and manipulate documents, trying their best to create non-existent diseases. Khan's father said that it was better to send this boy to the army as soon as possible. The general promised a fellow politician that his son would start his service right away. Soldiers in one unit could not understand why a general and a deputy appeared in their unit and sang karaoke. The general continued to sing, and Kong Yu-sung tried to guess the song in his mind. The politician asked his son if he was ready to join the service right away, and the young man said yes without hesitation. Khan is ready to start his service at this very second. He has managed to prepare everything to save his younger brother. The hero recalled how he collected information about this colony from grains of sand. An image of the beautiful Ka Se-min appeared in his mind, who managed to get out of there without losing her sanity. While his brother was in court, the young man got to know the juvenile offenders and received information about the situation inside the institution. Now he had a rough idea of what was happening behind those terrible walls, a real hell. Finally, the hero managed to become one of the wardens of a juvenile detention center. When he met the director of this institution, the young man decided that he would get his brother out of here by any means necessary. His Lee Min-seo must keep his sanity and be released as soon as possible. When he finally met with his brother, he said that if he obeyed him, he would soon be released. The plan is perfect if everything goes as Kang says. But when Lee finally got to his feet, he didn't listen to his brother. He flew up to the bald man and punched him in the face with all his might. The young man shouted furiously that the bastard was going to urinate on him. At that moment, the new warden saw Ka Se-jung. At the same moment, Kang's younger brother was acting like a madman, wanting to avenge his own humiliation. Kang realized that his perfect plan had gone awry from the start. Lee's cellmates realized that the new warden was his brother. But he should know that in this colony, each cell has its own rules and discipline. Khan asked in surprise if fighting was discipline for them. In that case, he would have to follow such discipline. The prisoners smiled predatory, saying there was no going back. Kong Yu-sung looked absolutely calm, confident in his own abilities. Meanwhile, his younger brother would not rest. He wanted to take revenge on Ka Se-jung, but he was too cold-blooded, so he avoided the attack without any fuss, simply stepping aside. Lee Min-soo missed and fell to the floor like a sack of potatoes. Jun said, "You can't even keep your balance, you're just screaming." Now the leader of this cell was more concerned about the new warden. He looked at Kong Yu-sung suspiciously, seeing him as a threat. How could he deal with everyone in such a short time? The hero said, looking at the floor where the beaten prisoners of Cell A were lying. Discipline, right? Ka Se-jun was deep in thought about the new warden, who he was, because he had never seen him before. Lee Min-soo successfully took advantage of the enemy's distracted attention and struck. The guy was happy with his small victory. Ka Se-jung barely got to his feet. He said with a threat in his voice, "I tried to turn a blind eye and treat you well." Now he has to become the new Poppy in the room. Lee Min-soo was too hot, he immediately rushed to attack. But it was this trait that prevented him from being a good warrior. He received a blow right in the face that he did not expect at all. Only now did the young man realize the real threat, because the leader of their cell is incredibly strong. Sejun asked the hero if he knew why the blonde became Poppy. Li Ming had already managed to regain his balance, and he believed that he did not need this information. But the guy's powerful punch was blocked. The leader said that Poppy was the head of this room. But because he was behaving the same way as Li Ming, I had to start raising him. After receiving another blow, the new warden's younger brother decided that he could not give in. Bringing his fist in for a punch, he exclaimed, "You are the most sneaky person in this room." Ka Sejun was faster and more skillful than the hero. In this unequal battle, Lee Min-soo was defeated. He was lying on the floor, irritated, wondering what the hell was going on. Why did he lose to a bastard who spoke ill of his mother? And he did it unilaterally, without even having time to strike. There was one more thing that made Lee Min-soo even more upset than the defeat. The hero thought that every time he was beaten, this idiot, his older brother, was there. Kang Yu-sung asked the younger man if he was alive. One of Min-soo's eyes swam, and he didn't say anything, just thought how bad it was. The elder brother picked up the younger brother and wondered why he was so light, if he hadn't been fed here. Kang Se-jung asked the new warden where he was taking Lee because he needed to think about his behavior. Kang replied that he belongs in solitary confinement. That's his punishment. The leader of Cell A asked if the warden wanted to fight him. Kang Yu-sung refused this offer and advised Ka Se-jung to stop these fights himself. After leaving the cell, the new warden added that his sister had asked him to pass it on. Lee Min-soo regained consciousness in solitary confinement. This time his hands and feet were not tied. The young man barely realized where he was. He did not know how long he had been unconscious. When he finally had the strength to stand upright, he thought about what the shaggy bastard would get next time. When he went to the bathroom, he thought he had forgotten something important. The last time Lee was in solitary confinement, he remembered that there was no toilet paper. He tried to turn on the faucet, but no water came out, so maybe the water supply was broken.
Pet the cat.